Hello, and welcome to episode 4, season 4 of That Magic podcast. It's good to see you're still giggling when I say hello. I like that.
I do it. It's just a nerve.
And I have a feeling you might have the opportunity to get a bit giggly in this episode because whereas last time it was mostly me talking about music, this time we're following up on something from one of the earlier episodes this season.
Yep.
And we're going to be looking at my birth chart.
Yes.
And who I am, who I might become as a person.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, it's positive and negative.
What, you mean you're both a happy person and...
No, I mean it says nice things and it says some not so nice things. Yeah. Some harsh truths and stuff like that, which we may or may not get into, but we're certainly gonna talk about what a birth chart is and how it works and that sort of thing.
Yep. Cool. All right. Let's do it.
Music!
You love music.
In a recent episode, somehow I volunteered.
You did? I didn't even badger you into it.
I know. I volunteered for you to do my birth chart. Now, I think for the record, I probably volunteered without really knowing what it was or what would happen, how psychologically damaging it might be.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fair.
Do you want to explain before we get into what it said?
Yeah.
What is a birth chart?
Right. So in astrology, which is where this particular kind of chart lives, a birth chart takes your date of birth and where you were born relative to, longitude and latitude and stuff on Earth, and it maps out using maths and algorithms where all the planets and the zodiac signs were relative to your position when you were born. What were they doing in the sky and stuff?
Okay, so some of the stuff we've talked about in previous seasons about the houses and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that the one where I really couldn't get my head around how it worked?
Yeah.
And the up, down, left, right, yeah.
That's the one about astral magic, where we did mostly just talk about the houses and what they mean. The birth chart provides so much more context, not just houses, but what the planets are doing, how they line up with all the other planets, whether the planets are in a particular star sign, whether the planets are also in a particular house while they're busy being in a star sign. And the idea being that you take the characteristics of the planets that come from astrology and the characteristics that come from the star signs, again, that come from astrology, and how those two things blend together are said to map out your kind of experience here on Earth throughout the course of your life. Now, I know it was hard, but when we talked about the one about astral magic and we did talk about the houses in astrology represent major aspects of life. So they might represent the self or your place in the world or death and taxes and stuff like that. So we did discuss what the houses mean and how the planets sit within the house structure lend a particular emphasis on what will happen for you in that major life aspect, if that makes sense. Right. I mean, to be clear, I'm not an astrologer, so I wouldn't want people to think that I was speaking with any form of authority, because this ain't what I do. I do astral magic, but I'm not an astrologer. But I can infer from astral magic what a birth chart is getting at, essentially.
Okay. And so to that end, you haven't written this...
What, that 17
page analysis of me and my personality.
Oh, God. No.
Hatchet job.
No, I did not write that, because guess what? In the life of our recording, you asked me to do that yesterday. So I did not write that, pull an all-nighter and get my protractor out and work out using maths. No, so
I
did not.
You put in the details into an app or something.
I did.
And it generated, using all of the, as you said, the relative position to when I was born and where I was born.
Yeah, I used a free app on Cafe Astrology.
Yeah, and so for people who have done things like Myers-Briggs or other personality tests and stuff like that in the past, what it generates is a similar sort of, here are bits and pieces about your personality, your characteristics, how you work, that sort of thing. And the reason I want to make it clear, and I'm not trying to suggest that you're in any way, shape or form lazy and haven't done anything, but I think it's important that people understand that you've done the thing in an app. All you've told it is where I was born, when I was born, and nothing else.
No, nothing else. I didn't.
So you haven't none of I'm just trying to, because we know each other quite well, and none of what is in this report, this chart, comes from you.
No, it's all algorithms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to take away from the effort that Cafe Astrology have put into their algorithm, because I'm sure it's amazing. I know fuck all about algorithms. Can I just be clear about that as well? There are some things I know.
This season seems to be the things that you don't know about. Not a scientist, not an astrologer, not a mathematician, not a music person.
No, exactly. So this is
not a robot.
This is pushing me out of my own comfort zone. So Cafe Astrology have obviously built their thing, their chart generator thing, using sophisticated algorithms that only need the information about when you were born and where you were born. But the algorithm is the same as if you were looking through the books, because you get an I'll say that wrong. A big book of numbers that obviously astrologers can use, that explains where all the planets were relative to where people were born. So it's using the same sorts of information, it's just it's not in the 1600s anymore. So now we can just tap and ta-da, there's your report.
The only reason I wanted to make the point was so that people watching and listening didn't think, well, of course it would contain stuff like that, because you know him, you can fill this stuff in and say stuff about who he is and his personality.
I could have done that.
Yeah, but you haven't written this. You've generated it.
Yeah.
But you haven't written this.
And some of it was mean.
Some of it was mean. And I think it also, so for people who've done Myers-Briggs or other personality tests, sort of things, insights, profiles, whatever like that, I think if you took the very clear astrological references and titles out of this and gave it to someone who'd done one of those in the past, you would have thought it's the same kind of thing.
Exactly. So, and this is the context to why we're talking about this today, isn't it? Because it comes from the backdrop of, you know, the previous episodes in this season, but also other seasons where we've talked about bringing magic into the mainstream, pushing it even more into like industry, corporate, and that sort of thing. And when we did the one about using tarot for personal development, how wouldn't it be amazing if you could just wander into the boardroom and start making some decisions based on what the tarot cards were saying? Well, this is just pushing it to the next level. No one thinks anything of doing a Myers-Briggs or the one with the colours. I forget what they're called. Insight profiles. I think that's one of them. One of the companies is Insight Profile, where you're filling in, it's like a survey about if a colleague was wearing a blue sweater, you would feel horrified, happy, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But they are rather banal questions, and you're supposed to answer them, without giving it any deep analysis. You're just supposed to go with your first reaction and get to the end of it within like 10 minutes, and ta-da, there is your entire personality and how you work with others.
Whereas this, you just need to give away some very personal details instead of answering any questions.
Yeah, exactly.
You get the same kind of thing.
You do. So,
I'm not sure how do you want to go through it, because I could sit here and say yes, it's quite accurate without going into any detail.
Well, I wouldn't want to speak for you. I don't know how much of this you want to share publicly with our viewers and listeners, but I'm happy to answer questions that you've got about what it is basically telling you and why it's important. So in Myers-Briggs, it will talk about like how you work in meetings and what your challenges are, what is difficult for you. In the birth chart report, it does touch on things that you might find difficult or certain challenging areas of your life, but it groups it within the context of X planet was in Y star sign.
Yeah. So,
and that's why you have these particular difficulties, or why you can excel at XYZ.
So, for example, I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but the very first thing it talks about the sun is in Taurus. So I am a Taurus. I'm not giving away birth dates and stuff like that.
Your sun sign is Taurus.
Right, yes, my sun sign is Taurus. And it talks about blah, 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 but then very short description, it says, strong-willed, charming, tolerant and stoical. That's nice to hear, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And it does say he appreciates the arts, music especially, which I think, given our last episode, is quite fun. But then it does get into weaknesses, and it says that I can be obstinate, I can be lazy, can be materialistic. Those are not nice things to hear.
Gestures round the room of all the things you have bought.
They are just not without truth. And I think that's the kind of the theme throughout, is it does, like I said, like a Myers-Briggs, like an insights profile, I think kind of describe who you are. I do seem to get on well with people, and that's a recurring theme coming out of this. I do kind of, like to, when I get into something that I'm interested in, I will really get into it and start to work at it properly. And I like challenges, new challenges, problems to solve. And that comes out of this.
It does.
And it does also say that, you probably would get a bit bored. And I do get bored. It's true. But I think there's things that I want to, for people, because it talks here, so there's a trine between the sun and moon. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? What is a trine?
A trine is a particular angle that is being formed between the sun and the moon.
Okay.
Right. Now, the sun has particular characteristics and the moon has particular characteristics. The trine is like a positive aspect. So it's like the sun and the moon are cooperating and collaborating with each other to bring out the best in you.
So in their relative positions at the time of my birth creates that angle, which is a positive thing. Okay. Because then there's other ones where it talks about a sextile. Yeah. That's sextile, just in case people wondered what I was saying, that's a different angle.
So that's also a positive angle that is being formed between the sun and in this
it's aspect. Sun and Jupiter.
Yeah, so the sun and Jupiter are teaming up to bring out some of your more positive characteristics.
Yeah, it says I'm generous and friendly, which is good.
So where it talks here, this is basically explaining what the sun is doing. Right. So you've said that the sun was in Taurus when you were born. Mm-hmm. This is your sun sign. the sun, as a planet, and it is a planet in astrology, the sun is how you are in the world, how you see yourself and how others see you in the world. It's all about your sense of self, your self-confidence, your charisma, your, how you act, walking about, existing.
All right. So what does it mean when it says there's opposition? So quite wonderfully here it says there's opposition between the sun and Uranus. Which
the sun does not shine out of your arse in that respect. So an opposition is, as you would expect, they are opposite each other. So they're kind of rubbing each other up the wrong way slightly. Okay. Now, Uranus has characteristics. Your anus has characteristics of being a bit revolutionary. So it's all about disruption.
I have a disruptive Uranus.
Yeah. So the fact that the sun and Uranus are in opposition, they're kind of, I don't know, having beef with one another.
Yeah, kind of think this refers a little bit to what it said earlier on about me being potentially obstinate. It says a sense of personal freedom. It can be quite a challenge to get me to do what I don't want to. So yeah, fair enough. Now, one of the things, we'll carry on and get into definitions as well. One of the things I didn't get or like so much about this was, there's a lot in here. We said it's 17 pages, and it goes into all of the different houses, all of the different planetary relations and stuff like that. So it's everything, I guess. Because of that, I thought there were times where it could be a little contradictory. It says I like tradition, it says I challenge tradition, that sort of thing. So a couple of bits and pieces. I presume you do get that sometimes in your Myers-Briggs and
you do, yeah.
But I presume it's also a bit, just because it's so comprehensive, there's going to be, and if you said it's your birth chart, so it covers your sort of life as a whole, you may develop as a person.
Yeah. So
you may move away from traditional values or whatever in using this as an example.
That's true, but also, like Shrek says, you are an onion. You have layers. And so you will never just be 17 pages worth of person, will you? Depending on the circumstances, you may lean more towards a particular set of values or play to your strengths versus another situation where that you might buck the trend a little bit and display the opposite of those values. So, I think that is what the birth chart is getting at, that because certain planets, when they team up with one another, they can bring out the best in you. They're also, because the birth chart, you are the whole of the zodiac and all of the planets. Another planet may be making an opposition to something else that is in direct conflict with the happy angle that was being formed with a more generous planet. So they all impact on you and how you exist in the world, depending on circumstances.
Fair enough. And there are bits where it's kind of frightening how accurate it
Isn't
can
it?
be. The moon is in the 3rd house, which says I'm responsive and communicative and curious. I may have a talent, I can have a talent for languages, which is, I've got 3 GCSEs in different foreign languages, so it's kind of like...
And you learn them on your own.
I learn them on my own as well, yeah, exactly. It's a bit weird. So yeah, it's... what was it? May have difficulty concentrating. Yep. Zone out in meetings all the time.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's I don't know, do you want to get into some of this?
Sure.
So a square, again, it says there's a square between the moon and ascendant.
Yeah.
So I think we might need to explain. So a square, again, I guess, is the position.
It's like a really hard aspect.
Right.
So it's getting proper Aggie.
What do we mean by ascendant? Because there's lots of things in here that I wouldn't recognise as planets. So it says ascendant. There's Lilith in here.
Yeah. So the ascendant is referring to the star sign that was rising up over the horizon at the time you were born. Your ascendant is Libra.
Right.
So your sun is in Taurus, but at the time that you were born, it was, like almost halfway, maybe even more than halfway through the daytime. So the sun has finished coming up with Taurus in the horizon, and another star sign has started to come up. So that's what the ascendant is getting at.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Lilith?
Now, so there is an astral body called Lilith, only I don't think it's getting at that. I think it's referring to a point in your chart. And now I think the black moon Lilith is referring more to almost demonology, in that Lilith represents the darker aspects of your personality.
Right, okay. That makes clear, because here it's talking about this opposition between the moon and Lilith, and then it goes on to describe stuff that I should just avoid.
What should you avoid?
Nothing interesting. All right, I'm just seeing if there are any other angles or things that we need to explain. There is a square between Mercury and the midheaven, which says, I have no specific aim in life, which is entirely fair. Just kind of fall into things and ended up in jobs just because.
All right, so
still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
I know. The midheaven is, do you remember in the one about astral magic where we talked about your place in the world? It's house 10 and it's straight up.
Right.
That's the midheaven. You've got a square there between Mercury and the midheaven. Now, Mercury is all about skills and learning and communication and stuff. So maybe because your place in the world and you've got that is bringing out the negative side, maybe that's why you don't know what you want to do. You have no specific aim in life.
Fair enough. Cool. Let's see. And then there's lots of stuff about the houses. The North Node? The North Node,
that's to do with the moon.
Okay.
And it's, I think, to do with what you should do. Like, if all things work out for you, your ultimate path or your destiny. I know we talked about fate versus free will before, so I'm trying to avoid using that's your fate, that's your destiny.
All right.
Yeah.
Because this talks about diplomacy, and it does say elsewhere stuff about diplomacy and mediation and things. And I do feel like actually I've done a lot of that recently at work. So yeah, all right. Houses, general star signs. Talked about those ones. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that might need explaining for people. A conjunction between Pluto and the ascendant, it says here. So what's a conjunction?
So Pluto is in the same sign as the ascendant, so it's in Libra.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And where the planets are in the star sign as well, the characteristics of the planet and the star sign will blend to sort of add richness or depth to where they are in the chart. So if the star sign is over a particular house and it's got a planet in it, that will add either a problematic situation to it if the planet is a malefic, or it will add a bit of a boost if it's a benefic.
What's a malefic?
A malefic are the kind of the arsehole planets.
Right. Okay.
So you've got Mars and Saturn are mostly described as the arsehole planets.
Right.
And then the good guys are Venus and Jupiter.
Obviously.
Mostly. I mean, they're all right. They all have their characteristics that are useful.
All right.
Mars, for example, is very take charge, and it's responsible for things like ambition and assertiveness and making sure that you're not walked over your entire life. But depending on where it sits in your chart, it can bring out some of that arsiness. or it can
not.
be more helpful.
All right. Okay. So it goes through with all of the different things with their relative positions to one another.
Mm-hmm.
It also it culminates, I think, with just each of the houses and a description of everything that's going on because of the different house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's and relative to everything else. So and I think the main, like I said, the main takeaway for me from this is having done different personality tests and things like that at work and different kind of answer these questions, like you said, gut response, don't overthink it. So the output you get from this is very similar to what you get from those tests and things that you do in a corporate environment. Like I said already, it talks about personality. I do recognize myself in here, even the negative aspects.
Even there, where it talks about that you delight in the sensual pleasures of food.
I mean, I did delight in the sensual pleasures of food, but then apparently, they're not good for me, so I'm not allowed to anymore. Now I delight in the kind of tedium of
vegetables,
beige food and vegetables. yeah, quite. Pleasing melodies coming from their stereos, it says I also delight in.
You do delight in that.
So there's lots of stuff in here. Can be nice, can be generous, persuasive, almost always use a soft sell approach to win people over and buy into stuff, which is
it's pretty much your job.
Yeah, always advocate that. I'm not a kind of a top down thou shalt. It's kind of, you've got to be on the journey with me to get it going and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's just all there.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
What does it say about how you're going to die? Not that I'm trying to rush this. I mean, the 8th house. Have a look at the 8th house. Because I want to show you what mine said. Carry on.
8th house.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Rush to the end. House 8. I will lead a happy old age, natural death likely.
Likely. It's not guaranteed though, is it?
Well, neither's yours. What does yours say? Scrolly. Yours is even longer, but then House 8. Natural death in very old age likely.
Very old age.
Very old age. What did mine say?
Old age.
Old age. Oh.
If you go first, I'm going to kill you. Who's going to do the podcast with me?
1,000 episodes. 1,000 episodes, that Magick podcast.
Exactly.
All right.
I think I'm getting the sense that you agree with what it says. So there are things in here that you might not want to share in a corporate setting. So do you think one could sort of faff with it to make it suit a corporate environment? Do you think Cafe Astrology could start pumping out some of these in the more corporate environment?
Yeah.
And less about...
You're right. This is
some
your...
of the sex.
Yeah, this is your personal... It's not a professional
and about how
thing.
you're going to die.
Yeah, so things like that. And there is a reasonable amount in here about your sex life or whatever.
Well, there was in yours and not in mine.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. Your approach to love, that sort of thing. So that's not necessarily useful for a corporate environment, nor appropriate.
No, because HR will.
But there are lots of things in here about because it does talk about ways you approach life, and having done Insight's profile where it that sort of thing shows how you are naturally and how you are in the office, and whether you kind of ramp up different types of your personality in an office environment. And we found that mine were exactly the same.
What you see is what you get.
I make no concessions for you bitches. With that in mind, that actually, yes, it's how I approach things in life. It does reflect how I would approach things in work. And I talked about wanting to bring people with me, wanting to, get buy-in to ideas and stuff like that, standing up for what I think is the right way of doing things. That comes out of this as well. I think, and so I also infer from that sort of defending people that work for me and looking after them and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think you could absolutely take your birth chart, and with some tweakage, like removal of the very personal bits and pieces in here, then yes, it could be used for a professional environment.
So is this the first time you've had an astrological character assessment? Assassination.
Yes, it is the first time. Yeah.
Okay, so can I ask
that I remember?
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of all the times that you wander about unconscious in the world.
Well, I think things may have been done for me when I was
without your
too young to really know anything about
Fair
it.
enough.
Similar sorts of things, but I don't think it was put in an app. I think it was a friend of a friend. I don't know how accurate it may have been.
Well, with
but I've not seen it.
It's an ephemeris, by the way. The astrologer's big book of numbers.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, scrape it from the back of my brain. Okay, so given that this is your first time, I know that some criticisms of an astrological birth chart are that, not unlike your newspaper horoscope,
it's a bit broad.
Yeah, you could fit yourself into someone else's. Like, I could read yours and you could read mine, but I want to get your take on it before I pile on with my own.
I don't think you could. I don't think it's a very small sample size. You could not make yourself that person.
No,
that's on my birth chart.
No,
absolutely not.
No,
and I know what you mean.
I
It's
think
about the broad stuff, and I did talk about some of the contradictory elements that exist within it. But then there's like hella specific stuff in here: the languages stuff, the music stuff. That's that's very specific to me. So there's other things in here as well about the mediation, that sort of thing, the way you talk to people, and yeah, I think that it's not that generic, and it does talk about me as a person and refer to what I am like specifically by name. It refers to this is, and I appreciate that is the algorithm just dropping in.
Oh yeah,
information.
To be clear, I did have to tell Cafe Astrology
it didn't just guess.
What you were called.
It was like, well, it's quite clearly, judging by the position of Taurus in Uranus, then he must be called. I get that. I get that you did put.
Otherwise, fucking hell, that's amazing.
Best birth chart ever.
No, all right.
So no, I don't think, I mean, yes, obviously there are people that will share personality traits with me that could look at this and say, well, that's similar to me, but I wouldn't expect to read yours and be able to go, oh, that could be me. It's not, and there's no way that you could read that and think that was you. Yeah,
and I tend to agree with you. I accept that whilst the statements that appear in this birth chart might be wide-ranging, and many people could easily be described as well-rounded and harmony-oriented.
But you'd get that in a Myers-Briggs.
Exactly, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, and some of the contradictory stuff that you mentioned earlier as well. When I read the insight profile for me, it would flip-flop between, oh, she likes going out and socialising, to, oh, don't invite her out because she hates people.
Yeah. I think, like I said, if you removed the very personal from it. And if you remove references to astrological elements, maybe headed it slightly differently, you could give this to someone in an office environment and they would ask which psychological test you've done. Because that's what it's like.
Because I'm trying to sneak it in.
I know you are. I know you are.
I'm trying to sneak it in under the wire to my project manager. So that he's not.
So he goes for
yeah,
it.
exactly. So that he doesn't get frightened.
But yeah. Cool.
So this is a birth chart, astrological chart. You're very welcome to read mine. Do they show up in pop culture? Astrology, does that show up in pop culture?
Well, yeah, astrology does, but often as a figure of fun. I think we might have touched on that when we were talking about some of the astrology stuff in the past. It's like weird, kooky people believe it, and it's not necessarily something that should be taken seriously. Nor should the people who are reading horoscopes and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
but that's how it is presented generally. Certainly in my limited experience.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to do your job on this podcast for you, but
that's okay. Go for it.
I couldn't see anything that really plays on the character in a movie or a TV show that goes to an astrologer and the whole film is based around that. I just couldn't, apart from maybe when Neo in The Matrix goes to see the Oracle. But I don't know if the Oracle was an astrologer.
No, I don't think so. She's not really presented as being astrology. I don't think. She's just someone who is within the program and knows stuff. I'm just having a quick Google. I can't see anything really.
Because I think when we talked about astrology in the one about astral magic, I think from that perspective we were talking about timing the magic. How in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Giles is very much talking about the position of the planets and where they are and when the time for the ascension is for certain like apocalyptic things, but that's not the same as getting your chart read specifically. No,
exactly. And it is, I mean, so there are elements of that, and the same like crystal ball and things, that kind of, it's all seen under the one umbrella. It doesn't differentiate, I don't think. And, but again, even if ultimately going and having your fortune told results in something that's right, you're still a bit of a kook for going. It's not a we must all do it. So,
but isn't that interesting? Because you've brought that up. You've brought up fortune telling, but we were just talking about a birth chart. Did it tell your fortune?
No, I don't think it did.
It didn't.
But then it would be interesting in some regard to do that for someone who's much younger.
Why?
I can reflect back.
Oh, okay.
And say,
because you've already experienced so much of your life.
Decades.
Decades.
Exactly.
Yes, as have I.
Whereas I think if you did one for someone who is younger, then does it get into an element of fortune telling? Are you getting a sort of a glimpse into the person they might become? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I bring fortune telling into it because I think pop culture generally sees all of that as the one kind of, it's the same as the horoscopes in the paper.
Yeah. Should we just talk a little bit about horoscopes in the paper? Because I do think it's probably worth mentioning that, your one page of A4 in a magazine or the newspaper is not the same as getting your birth chart because, well, for one thing, it only ever talks about where the sun was relative to, the sign it was in when you were born, your sun sign. Whereas, as we've looked at with your birth chart, you are all the signs and all the planets, and that's your whole bag, basically.
And also, the by their very nature, the horoscope stuff, they're like, 2-3 lines at best. They have to be broad. They have to be relatively vague. And I imagine they're often written, in my opinion, I'm not suggesting this is fact, in my opinion, they're probably written by people who have no idea at all anyway. It's just.
You mean you don't think they've got their ephemeris out?
No, I don't think they have. I don't think they have.
Okay.
So you will breathe today. You will meet someone. You might eat food today. You know.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a bit. But it has to be catch-all, doesn't it? Whereas this is mine was 17 pages.
Front and back.
Front and back. Yours was even longer.
I know.
So yeah.
I've obviously got to have much more of a rich life than you because there's more pages in it.
I'm pretty sure it was a bigger font, but okay. But yes. But so I think, like I said, take out the personal stuff, change some of the headings around. You could pass it off as being a Myers-Briggs equivalent, that sort of thing. I think it would be interesting to do it for someone who's much younger than us and looking ahead rather than recognizing what I have done in the past in here. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how accurate it was, because I've not really been convinced by astrology in the past because of things like horoscopes in the newspaper and how pop culture treats it. So it was, and it was interesting to see it written out like that in a way that is very much like a psychological test sort of thing. And I think that's more convincing, more compelling than if it had just been the sun was in
Uranus.
In Taurus.
The sun would never be in Uranus.
You like to smile.
Yeah, okay, cool. So whilst it might not show up in movies and TV shows, it almost certainly shows up against the backdrop of popular culture by virtue of it being in most magazines and newspapers as a horoscope.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how we refer to each other. Not you and me, I mean people generally. We only would refer to our sun sign. Yeah,
exactly. And people do that. And you see it's all over Instagram and TikTok and stuff now. Yeah. It's like, you're this sign, so you are this type of personality, that sort of thing. Or don't come near me on a Wednesday because I'm a Sagittarius. I don't know. You know, that kind of stuff.
Don't come near me on a Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly.
or any day with a Y in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you for doing it. It was interesting.
It took no effort.
I know. And yet still I was able to read it and go, oh yeah, that's me. I was like, oh no, that's me too. Yeah, it doesn't shy away. It's
no,
positive and negative.
So good character summary.
Yes.
All right. That's it. That's our show. Subscribe to our website to receive free articles, downloadable spells and guided meditations. Start your magical tuition today at magentaschoolofmagic.com.